Good morning, everybody. My name's Chris Beauchamp. I'm the mayor of Woonsocket. It's great to have all these fine individuals here, people that are concerned about, homelessness, housing, everything that affects people that in this city that are unhoused. We're here to discuss what Woonsocket's doing, what we're going to implement. We have a updated report on the task force and their accomplishments. So I just want to thank everybody that was a part of that, and somebody else will recognize them later. For my part, I am just one piece of the puzzle. We got many community partners from public safety, Community Care Alliance, the nonprofits. I can't mention them all because they're not in front of me, but somebody will. We've all come together since last year in February of 23 to say, let's get a task force together, figure out what's happening, what we can do to help, what we can do to correct, and then we finally came up with a report that has solutions. And it's going to take time and effort and money and state help and maybe federal help, but Woonsocket's tackling the situation. So I just want to go over a couple of real quick things, if I can. What is the main thing or the main reason why we have homelessness, not only here in Woonsocket, but throughout the state and throughout this country, is housing. And if we can correct some of the housing issues that we have, or the lack of housing, it's a great precursor to people being housed and they don't become homeless and other things. And I know the state has got $120 million earmarked for housing, and it's a great first step, but we need much more money than that. I think Massachusetts is billions compared to what we've done. And, I appreciate the governor and everybody else trying to help, but we all got to do this together. It doesn't start with just one city or town, it's everybody. So I want to go over just a few quick points that I highlighted in the report that I thought were important. Affordable housing. People have misnomers about that. Affordable housing in Woonsocket, we have over the 10% law in the state. And we have, I think, 15.5%. We're third in the state. But unfortunately, there is a need for that here. And when people have a house, somewhere to live, other problems don't exasperate. So we got to do better. Even though we're over 10%, we still got to do better. And we're looking at those issues. NeighborWorks, which is here today, Joe Garlick, they started a housing project at the end of Main Street. It's well into probably 40-50% done, maybe more, and it's going to be a help. We have housing projects or contractors coming into Woonsocket, looking at the old Woonsocket Coal building, the old Cornstein's building for housing, and some commercial on the first floor. So we're tackling the housing as best as we can, but it takes time and money. And those things don't happen overnight. I want to read a couple of things that I highlighted on the report when we met a couple of weeks ago, and I'll be as brief as I can. But the main reason why people are homeless is housing and lack of affordable housing. And that's the biggest issue that I see here. Woonsocket last year, the median household income was $48,822, less than half the income needed to purchase an average price house in the city. Currently, only 38% of the city residents own their own home. 61% of them are still paying off their mortgage. And the rents are going out of control too. And that's another thing we got to look at, right? Rent control. Too many landlords, and this is coming out of the report, too many landlords, many of them corporate landlords, drive up the prices because they can, not because they need to. And we got to do better as a city, as a state, in controlling the rent, so people can afford to stay where they are. The opioid addiction crisis. Obviously that has led to many people suffering not only from that, but through losing home, losing their housing, losing their job potentially. And what I've learned is that the opioid crisis affects everybody. It doesn't just affect people that you may think have a drug problem, an alcohol problem. It affects people that go to work every day. lawyers, doctors. It affects everybody. And I'm sure everybody in this room has somebody that they know in their family or in their circle that is affected. And that is a big reason why we see the homeless population increasing. I mean, I've lived in Woonsocket all my life. I can see how many people are unhoused. It seems like it grows every day. And without this task force coming together and working on a plan, we're never going to get to the solution, but we started that. And I give a lot of credit to the task force. And then I just want to talk quickly about some of the misperceptions about who's experiencing homelessness. And all people who are homeless are addicts and are suffering from profound mental illness. That's not the case. It must be understood that homelessness itself can be a cause of addiction and mental illness, stress, anxiety. The population of those who are homeless only comprise single adults. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, about 68% of homeless people are single adults, just another 28% are families with children, and 5% are unaccompanied youth. Those who are homeless often refuse offers of appropriate assistance. Now, I thought that was true, but according to the report, local and state agencies who provide direct service to those who are homeless report that very few people decline assistance. The vast majority are eager to ask and receive assistance. For those who do decline, it's often because of emergency or short-term shelters where many people are grouped together in close quarters, often triggering high anxiety in those coping with the trauma. So, some of the misnomers that I thought, I've learned that they're not all true. So I'm just going to end on a couple of things, and I'll introduce the next speaker. We need to work collaboratively as a state, as a city, and I'm in constant contact with our delegation here from Rhode Island, plus our federal partners, Senator Whitehouse, Senator Reid, Congressman Amo, Congressman Magaziner. I'm making sure that we cooperate and talk to each other, because it can't be solved by one person or one entity. It's got to be a collaboration of everybody. So I thank everybody for being here. I want to introduce Council Vice President Valerie Gonzalez, who started this task force back in February of 23, and I give her a lot of credit. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As the mayor said, in February 2023, we began this community partnership task force. It was formed to paint a real picture of our social service needs and to work together to find solutions. The city leadership, our public safety department, the Woonsocket Housing Authority, the faith community, local, state, and social service agencies, and the residents gathered for a roundtable discussion because it takes all of us at the table to find real solutions. I would like to recognize the current task force partners. From the administrative branch of the city of Woonsocket, we have Mayor Christopher Beauchamp, Margot Morisseau, the director of the Woonsocket Department of Human Services, John Paglarini, the tax assessor and interim planning director, Alyssa McDermott, administrator for the federal grants program for the city of Woonsocket, Laura Eclair, planning department grant writer, and from the legislative branch of the city of Woonsocket, we have myself, Valerie Gonzalez, vice president of the Woonsocket City Council and chair of the task force, Councilman David Susi. From the Woonsocket Housing Authority, we have Todd Boisvert, who is the executive director of the Woonsocket Housing Authority. And from our local service agencies, we have Community Care Alliance, which is one of the largest social service providers here in the city of Woonsocket. Benedict Lessing, who is the executive director, Michelle Taylor, who is the vice president of social health services, TJ Martineau, who is the social health service division deputy, David DeVoe, who is a social worker at Community Care Alliance. In NeighborWorks, who is also a partner, we have Joseph Garlick, who is the executive director, From the Blackstone Valley Prevention Coalition and the Woonsocket Prevention Coalition, we have Lisa Garza-Farrow. She's the Executive Director and Regional Director in the other. And from the Woonsocket Health Equity Zone, we have Dupe Akinrimisi, and who is a project manager. We have Rachel Heisen, who is the logistic and COVID lead. From public safety, we have Thomas Kaluro, Deputy Chief of the Woonsocket Police Department, and the Fire Chief, Robert Cahill. From the state agencies, we have Michelle Brophy, who is the Associate Director for Vulnerable Populations from PHDDH. From the faith community, I know it sounds like a lot of names, but that's what it takes, a lot of people to get this done. We have Reverend Peter Turney, who is the Vicar and St. James Episcopal Church, Director of Coat of Many Colors. Reverend Steve Bacon, he is the pastor of Harvest Community Church. Deacon Thomas Gray from St. James Baptist Church. And we have also community members. Nancy Benoit, she's a retired educator, former member of the Rhode Island State House of Representatives. She was a board member of Community Care Alliance, NeighborWorks, Woonsocket Head Start Child Development Association. And we're so fortunate to have with us Bruce Daigle, who is also a retired educator, former director of the Woonsocket Department of Human Services, and he is the person who led the charge on this report. We meet every first and third Tuesday of the month. First Tuesday we do virtually, and third Tuesday we do in person, although our consistency has become on a weekly basis since we are tackling the short-term and the long-term action plan. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the accomplishments that we've had since February 2023. We're very proud to have effected the regionalization of the coordinated entry system. The city of Woonsocket and many surrounding communities have desired regionalization for over 20 years. Essentially, this enables communities that provide homeless services to bypass the state priority system and serve their communities first. Everybody said it can't be done. For 20 years. We have been having this conversation, but what happens when you bring everybody to the round table, you realize you're having the conversation in the wrong circle. It wasn't to be changed at the legislative level. There was something called the continuum of care, which many of us didn't even know about. And when we found out about it, within 4 months, we were able to get 75% regionalization, not only for Woonsocket, but for the entire state. We also brought the Dignity Bus, which provides 20 overnight sleeping quarters for the same cost that we were spending on 15 hotel beds for 6 months. And we just secured another 9.5 months of funding for the Dignity Bus. Another thing we're proud of is we've used some of the opioid settlement funds. We appropriated $154,000 of opioid settlement funds to the Woonsocket Education Department for the implementation of life skills prevention curriculum to educate students about the dangers of opioid abuse and empower them to make informed decisions about their health and well-being. We are all talking a little bit of what has impacted us from the report. I want to go to page 9 of the report, where it highlights the 4th largest city in the United States, Houston, Texas, who has successfully cut the unsheltered population from 8,500 to 3,200. That is a 60% reduction. For the city's homeless veterans, the wait of permanent housing was reduced from 720 days to just 32 days. Houston plan, and I'm reading right from the report, Houston's plan of action has become a model for other cities. Most of the cities who are listed below, listed above in the report, based their own plans on Houston. Because some of these cities saw less reduction of their homeless population than Houston, Houston experts studied the differences. They concluded that the reasons for the lower reductions were lack of coordination, energy, and resources that were applied to those plans. I think that's a key element in this conversation because it puts Woonsocket ahead of the curve and on the right path. When we look around, I'm a firm believer that answers to all of our social service issues are found in the collective community. And solutions don't happen overnight, but Woonsocket is on the right path as we bring together all these different entities to have the conversations and collaborate together on what the solutions are moving forward. With that, I thank you all for being here today, and I would like to introduce Nancy Benoit, a member of the Community Task Force and longtime fierce advocator of housing.
Thank you, Valerie. Good morning, everyone. And I would also like to thank Valerie and Mayor Beauchamp for their leadership on this issue. We've been at it for a little over a year, and Valerie has been our fearless leader. She's done a wonderful job. We probably all know or know of someone who is homeless, has moved in with someone, has had their rent raised, can't find an apartment they can afford, has an alcohol or drug addiction, or a mental health problem. I volunteer at my parish food pantry, Holy Trinity Food Pantry, every Tuesday. People come from all walks of life, elderly people, people with families, single people, couples. Some people come with vouchers from CCA, Community Care Alliance, some because they've called the state number 211 and have been referred, some come by word of mouth. Once they register, they can come once a month. Each week, we hear their stories. A mom with 3 kids, her rent has been raised, she has an eviction notice, she's on multiple lists for housing, she's very stressed. Individuals who have moved in with family or friends, they hope temporarily. An older couple living in an inexpensive motel in Woonsocket because they can afford this on their SSDI checks, but they can't afford an affordable apartment, or they can't pay the first month rent, the last month rent, and the security deposit. A woman who lives in her car, another who lives in a tent. And we see some success stories. The woman who lives in the tent, after coming for a couple of months, came one day with a voucher that had an address on it. She had an apartment. With the help of CCA, she had moved into an apartment. Now, almost a year later, she's still in that apartment, and she's been thrilled ever since she got it. We need more housing. Housing is the answer. More subsidized housing for low-income families, more supportive housing, more recovery housing, and with winter coming, more emergency shelter housing. In 1988, Woonsocket faced a similar yet smaller housing crisis. I served on a city task force then that was formed to investigate housing issues in Woonsocket. After many months of studying and working together on the issue, we determined that we needed more affordable housing units, rental units, and home ownership opportunities, a temporary shelter for people who were homeless, and a shelter or a home for women fleeing domestic violence. From the work of that task force, 3 programs were begun that are still working in Woonsocket today. Sojourner House opened a home for victims of domestic violence. Woonsocket Neighborhood Development Corporation was formed. Now that's known as NeighborWorks. NeighborWorks has constructed 220 affordable housing rental units or owner-occupied single-family homes in Woonsocket. And a homeless shelter was established. This is the Woonsocket Family Shelter that is now operated by CCA. It usually houses about 55 people, half of whom are children. This report outlines what needs to be done to address the issue of homelessness in Woonsocket. It is only a beginning, it's only an outline. Our community has always come together to solve problems and to help people. And it will take the commitment and energy of all of us, government, the nonprofit sector, the faith community, the business community, and all people of goodwill to work together to address homelessness in Woonsocket. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce our fire chief, Chief Bob Cahill.
So I'd like to thank the Homelessness Coalition for taking on this endeavor, more specifically Valerie Gonzalez, Chief Mayor Chris Beauchamp for taking on this. It's a huge endeavor, and I'm glad that they're taking it up. I'd like to speak about, so we have this high increase in opioid epidemic in Woonsocket. So over the last 6 months, we've had 111 non-fatal overdoses. So that's what we track. So there's more to that have actually died from their overdose. Now, part of the report I read, Mayor Beauchamp had brought it up. Does the homelessness cause the opioid epidemic, or does the opioid epidemic cause the homelessness? They seem to go hand in hand, which was in part of the report there. The biggest factor for us is responding to the homelessness encampments. So doing a study on where most of our overdoses have come from, they've come along the riverbanks, the Blackstone riverbanks, which is where the homelessness encampments are. So it's a safety concern for the first responders. Police and fire alike. We're going down on the edge of the riverbank, which is a steep slope. Most of the time it's loose gravel, so it's unsteady footing. There are used uncapped needles just about everywhere, so it becomes a bigger safety concern for exposure risks for our members going down there. On the same token, it's not a well-lit area in these encampments, so we're going into a dark environment. We're entering into what they consider their housing area, so are we friend or foe? We're not certain how they're going to react to us. A lot of them have some mental health issues. A lot of them have the substance abuse issues that are going on. How are they going to perceive us as we're coming down into their encampment? So that becomes a safety concern for us as well. Some of the places that they have high anxiety with their mental health issues, so they might have a booby trap to keep other people out of there, which we're now walking into from a public safety standpoint. Some of them might have weapons to protect themselves. Again, it goes into the safety aspect for our first responders when we go down into these encampments. So I think with the housing crisis being fixed, or at least a huge step being taken forward today, given a stable shelter over their top, over their roof, over their head, so they have a stable roof, which would hopefully lead to a stable lifestyle, stable work environment. Is it going to resolve all of the problems? I don't think so, but it's an excellent step forward in solving the unhoused crisis that we have in Woonsocket. So I do applaud these people for taking on this endeavor, Valerie and the mayor for stepping up and taking on these issues. The next person up to speak will be Bruce Daigle. He's the author of the draft that was put forward on the Homelessness Coalition. Bruce?
Thank you, Chief. I'm the last speaker, and I think the shortest. I'd like to begin by thanking the media who have come out today for this press conference. We truly appreciate your time and attention to this issue and to our efforts to resolve it. I also want to thank my fellow task force members, especially our chair, Valerie Gonzalez, and those who shared with me their time, expertise, and wisdom as I set out to pull the pieces together for this report. And a profound thank you to all those housing specialists, healthcare providers, and social workers in the field, administrators, faith leaders, board members, and volunteers who spend long hours with too few resources to try and meet the needs of all those who are without secure, affordable housing in our community. As our report makes clear, the housing and homelessness problems here in Woonsocket are not unique. The tangle of factors that have put people on the street or in shelters, or left them just barely hanging on. It's the same in Houston and Newark, Chattanooga, Minneapolis, San Diego, and Providence as it is here. In those communities and others, people have come together and developed strategies that have worked, saving the lives of hundreds of thousands of people and strengthening their communities. We hope to do the same here. For far too long, here in our city, the voices of blame and condemnation, among them some of our own leaders, have sought to cast these most unfortunate of our brothers and sisters as being responsible for their own terrible plight. A few even sought to remove them from our community, sometimes by manipulation, sometimes by force, as if these suffering souls had not yet suffered enough. Others, even among the highest levels of our state government, have deliberately turned their heads away from this growing crisis, excusing inaction with further study or openly doubting the scope and depth of the problem. But today, there is a new sense of optimism in our ability to resolve this issue. Many in our city and state have come together in a spirit of cooperation and purpose. Mayor Chris Beauchamp has supported our task force and appointed a new Human Services Director, Margot Morisseau, who has deep experience in housing issues. City Council members, including David Susi, John Ward, Garrett Mancieri, and Brian Thompson, have shown their interest by attending some of our meetings. Rhode Island House Speaker Joe Shekarchi has been an active advocate on this issue for several years. And faith leaders, including the Reverend Steve Bacon, Reverend Peter Tierney, Deacon Thomas Gray, Father Dan Sweet, and Bishop Richard Henning, have contributed space and services to those who are homeless, hungry, or in need of other material support. And, as mentioned, that web of service agencies and professionals who have been the foundation of this work for decades continue their efforts every day. Providing affordable, secure housing for all those who need it will be a long and difficult task, and we have just begun. Within a few weeks, we will be proposing an action plan with specific steps to meet these needs, which I am hopeful will bear much fruit. For I believe it is God's work we are doing, and our cooperation in that work will bring graces and blessings we can scarcely imagine. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice." It's my hope that this report is received as an invitation to join together in this moral and just work, not only for the sake of our brothers and sisters who are most in need, but for the health and growth of our community as well. I thank you for your time and attention and your attendance here today. We will now take your questions.
I have a question.
Steve?
Other communities are dealing with the same problem, as you mentioned, Providence. West Warwick is kind of famously taking a very different tactic. And I was wondering if your group would be open to discussions with other leaders from other municipalities to talk about what you're doing and how it might be a model for them.
Well, as Valerie and Nancy pointed out earlier, cooperation is key here. And not just cooperation within the community, but cooperation between communities.
Mm-hmm.
Rhode Island's a small state. It should be very easy, much easier for us than in other places, to reach out and to help them and to ask their assistance for us as well.
Thank you.
You mentioned a report that will be available the first few weeks. Can you elaborate that? So are you guys going to maybe do a study on this first and then come back with a report whether that plan works?
So what we've done here is a report on the situation, and it outlines solutions that have worked elsewhere and we think can work here if we apply them appropriately. What we're also doing concurrently with that, as Valerie pointed out earlier, is we're doing kind of two things. We're trying to address the short-term needs for this winter as they're coming up. Also, we're working on an action plan for the long term. And that should be out in just a few weeks. We've already been working on that. And that'll have very specific steps on what it is we're going to be doing. But much of what that report or that plan is going to draw from is this report.
So we're in constant, you will be checking those reports constantly to see what works step by step. It's not one thing, but by levels, by different stages.
Right, yeah, we're juggling a lot of balls here. There are a lot of issues. The chief pointed out the opioid crisis, and there are a ton of others. I mean, we're looking, as someone earlier pointed out, the median income of the city is $48,000. The average price of a home here in the city this year is $365,000. You need more than twice the median income in order to purchase a house. There's only 19% of the city residents here who can afford to do that. And an earlier speaker pointed out, or I think it was the mayor, who talked about the rental situation in Woonsocket. Rents for a 2-bedroom apartment here in Woonsocket have gone up over 50% in 1 year. So we're looking at a lot of different factors overlaying, and so we have to have a plan with multiple strategies and tactics that we need to use to address all of those situations.
Will law enforcement be involved in this strategy as well?
Yeah, law enforcement is key here. Public safety is key. We have fire chief here today, Tom. Sorry? Caloro. Tom Caloro is the deputy police chief, and he's a member of this task force as well. So yes, we've always understood that public safety is a key ingredient in all of this.
One more. With the upcoming election, do you think this plan is robust enough to survive maybe some changes in the seats up here and leadership in general?
Let me look in my crystal ball.
Yeah, please. But have you heard from people who are coming up who are interested in maintaining this?
Certainly we've been very happy to hear that there are several candidates running for citywide office, city council, mayor, who have already expressed their concern about housing and homelessness. And so we're hoping that that transfers over into the election results. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen there. But regardless of who gets elected, we're going to reach out. Ben Lessing, at a meeting we had just the other day, I came up with the idea of inviting all of those candidates to a workshop so that they can learn more about this issue, so that when they speak about it from a policy perspective, they can get it right.
What sort of specific funding is available to address some of the items in your action plan?
I'm going to turn that over. Are you the best one to? Okay, I thought so. So I'm going to turn that question over to Margot Morrissaw, who's the director of the city's Human Services Department.
So we are applying for the Department of Housing's municipal grant program. So the Department of Housing has made funding available to municipalities. We work hand in hand with our partners, especially Community Care Alliance, to try and figure out what is the best use of the funding that we can apply for to be able to put roofs over the most people's heads. So we are also looking at, our wonderful grant writers are here as well. We're looking at federal grants. We're looking at anything we possibly can to make sure that we're getting people into shelter this winter and beyond. But there's never enough of it.
I have a question.
Yes.
The Dignity Bus was implemented last year. Do you have any updates on that? How that has been helping the prices?
So I'm going to turn that question over to Valerie Gonzalez. The question is the update on the Dignity Bus, and if we have a date for opening it.
So before I go on the Dignity Bus, I just want to clarify that the Community Partnership Task Force itself doesn't have funding. We work with the agencies and we advocate. For example, there were some initiatives that CCA wanted to do, and as a task force, we would send letters advocating and helping to support. We make a lot of phone calls to a lot of different people, but the task force itself, the only thing that it doesn't come through the task force, but the city did allocate some of the opioid settlement funds for us to be able to figure out how to distribute. But the task force itself is not applying for funding anywhere. The Dignity Bus, we just got the information through CCA. We are funded for 9.5 months, and then those are going to be CH funds. So we are working currently, because we had to stop, now we have to make sure we hire the proper staff and that we begin to organize everything. So it should be, Michelle, I will not give a date because I don't have a date, but we are having those conversations right now, trying to get it up and running as soon as possible. 9.5 months, I don't know where that came from, but you know, we'll take whatever we can, right? Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, one, Bruce. These people that are homeless, obviously, they, when you do house them, are you going to vet them to make sure there's nothing in the background so it doesn't cause a problem once they're in the homes? Are they vetted? Are they, you have names, you have fingerprints, you have anything to keep track of these people at all?
So a lot of the homeless people have already been in touch and in contact with social service agencies. And to the extent that they have, those agencies have that information. But one of the key issues here, and what Houston certainly proves, and what a lot of the other communities who have had success in housing the homeless, is that housing first is key. Housing first. And that means without condition. Okay? Because once you establish a stable environment for people, then you can work with them on all the other issues they may have, whether it's mental illness or addiction or whatever. Somebody once used this analogy for me. I thought it was terrific. It's like me swimming out to save someone who's drowning. And when I get there, I tell them I'll bring them in, but they have to learn how to swim first. It doesn't work. You got to pull them in first. You have to save them. And then you can work with them on the issues that got them in that situation in the first place.
So you'll be swimming forever, basically saying, because the people that are there now, the people that are under the bridge where I am, which is my businesses are adjacent to it, so they come right up in the morning, they have a party in the morning, they call the fire department, they call the police department, I have to call them, I have to make sure the girls are safe in the morning opening up, they harass my customers, they're all over them for money. It's very difficult because eventually businesses will shut down because just like you saw in San Francisco, which is a whole different example, but you don't want that to keep growing because once you take care of the ones that are there now, there will be more coming because the ones that are there now come from Providence because I talk to them. They're not from here. They're not the customers that I've been dealing with for 35 years that are struggling. This is a whole different animal that you got to deal with and it's not going to stop. So you have to have a plan for the future of housing because they're not going to stop coming. Difference is we live in a river city, a lot of bridges. It gives them coverage. where they can all live. So it's everywhere in our city. Every bridge is there, there's people living there, and it's only getting worse. But at the same time, do I want to call the Chief Oaks and call Bobby and have the fire department there every day or something? I mean, the cost is going to be on the taxpayer, right? Right? Is that where the cost is going to come from?
Rocky,
Yeah.
all money that comes for any of these services comes from
I'm
tax
looking at
money.
the safety factor.
Yeah.
I see older women, older than me. I mean, I'm 65. They're in their 70s. They're trying to get a coffee and they get jumped at by these people. I need money. I need some money. God bless. It's like, scare the hell out of them. And what do? They give them money because they're scared. That's not right either, though, Bruce.
So-
That's wrong.
Rocky, what I'd
No
suggest,
matter what their issues are, you can't let that happen. So you need some type of a safety net for people and businesses around the area.
so what I would suggest to you first is read the report. Okay, we address all of those things. Okay, and the reason that we're doing this is because what's happening in the community here is impacting everybody.
Exactly.
Okay, we know that. That's why we need to resolve this.
I know that.
Okay, but there are solutions that are out there that have worked, and we intend to apply those solutions here because they work. Okay, now is everything going to be hunky-dory in 3 weeks or 3 months?
Not asking for that.
Okay, good, because that's not going to happen.
asking for that.
Okay.
I'm on the front line though, put it that way. I'm right there when they wake up and come right at you,
Yeah.
okay?
This
And
is
I'm
a
at
small
your house,
community,
I'm
Rocky.
coming at you, I'm just saying.
No, you're right, and this is a small community, but certainly it's a community where everybody's on the front line.
I get it,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's not just a question of, your customers coming out, and I
No, it
understand,
isn't.
certainly,
I get it.
that's an
I
issue.
feel bad for them,
It's happening everywhere.
yeah. I
Okay.
feel bad for the people that are under the bridge.
Sure.
Well,
And I think one of the things we want to keep in mind, Rocky, is these people are broken,
I know.
okay? I mean, these are the most needy of our brothers and sisters out there. They're the most needy.
Bruce, I got 35 years of seeing the same thing.
I know you do.
Because I took care of those people my whole life. I've given them money out of my pocket.
I know you have.
And you never see it again, but I don't care. Doesn't matter. I try and help everyone I can. But
Right.
when it gets to a different level, then there's something that has to be done. That's all I'm
Let me
saying.
just interject.
Yeah. The mayor would like to add here, so I'll step aside here. But thank you, Rocky.
Good.
Thank you. And, he's correct. It's affecting residents, it's affecting businesses. I see it every day. So, under my administration, with the help of this task force, with the help of the city council, we're gonna do outreach. And we're gonna outreach with CCA to connect to the people that live in Woonsocket that are unhoused. Because my focus is making sure the people that are from Woonsocket, we help. People that are from other areas, whether it's Providence, Lincoln, North Smithfield, wherever, other cities and towns got to do their share too, right? So we want to make sure we have a connection with the people that do the outreach to ensure that the people that we're going to go after are the people that live in Woonsocket or have ties to Woonsocket. I'm not going to say we're going to discriminate everybody, but I see this population getting bigger. And to me, as the mayor of this city, I don't want my residents or my businesses having to see some of the stuff that goes on that, nobody should see. People, defecating, urinating in public. It's not going to be allowed. So we are tackling specifically the homeless population under the bridges. But we've done 2 or 3 cleanups already. We've given them garbage bags, we've given them dumpsters, a porta-john to say, listen, if you start helping yourself, we'll be there to help you. But again, I am not going to do this continuously and then taken advantage of. And we've talked about this, right? So if people are there to help themselves, we're going to do what we can to help them. But we have such a momentum in housing and developers coming here. The Vernon Mills, which is right outside this window, if you look at it, that's the Court Street Bridge. That mill is going to be developed with the help of home funds from the city, hopefully with some other federal funds. And those people underneath the bridge will not be allowed to be there any longer, based on the construction, based on some infrastructure work going on. But as a city, I can't just say, move out, you're out, and not have a place to put them if they want to be somewhere. That's what we're going to do. We're going to remove people in a dignified way but we're gonna find a place, if they want help, to put them. And that's what the task force, one of the main things we wanna do is find a place, a building, where we can house unhoused people and get them in housing so they can build up, so they can have their own place. So that's the key here, right? Because I've talked to the unhoused, I've talked to the people under the bridge. They're not ready to go into their own apartment tomorrow. They just can't. They're not ready for that. They got too many other things going on. So there's needs that we gotta address first, and as Bruce said, you know, the people that want help, we're gonna help them. And Mr. Bodelli is right. You know, it affects his business, and people are scared. I see it downtown, I see it in other places. So we're gonna work together with the Outreach Community Care Alliance, the people that go into the homeless encampments, and I'm gonna go with them. I'm sure Valerie would greatly volunteer to come with me and find out exactly what they need, because that's how we get this problem moving forward. We're gonna wrap this up. Valerie, you got something to add?
I just wanted to add that we understand how the situation is currently, but again, the collaboration of all the different entities, being able, we had complaints that, you know, CCA runs Safe Haven, Serenity program, and when they would close about 4:30, then the unhoused didn't have anywhere to go until when we were running the Dignity Bus. Dignity Bus doesn't run till 9, so we were getting complaints that they're all over the place. Well, we reached out to some of the faith community, be the church. We started doing a feeding ministry. I actually got certified to do a recovery program because we wanted not just to give them a space to go to, but in the time that they're spending there, we want to be able to provide knowledge and things that they need to be able to better themselves at that time. So we were feeding from 5:30 to 6:30. The recovery program ran from 6:30 to 8:30, and then we would transport them over to the Dignity Bus. So it's in those details as we continue to have the conversations and we see where these gaps are. We hear the plight on the businesses. So we sit down and let's talk about what is some of the possible solutions, because the truth is people are complaining about homeless people defecating and urinating in different places, but do they know that they used to use the bathroom at a Dunkin' Donuts or Burger King? They're no longer allowed, and when you have to use the bathroom, I'm not putting a stamp of approval that that's how it should be, but sometimes you don't know the backstory, and this is why the mayor did an effort to put the porta-johns and to put the dumpsters in areas where they can easily access them. Also, when we had a conversation with some of the outreach workers from CCA, and there was an area that we were talking about cleaning up. Well, the outreach workers stepped up and they spoke to the people in that encampment and said, hey, they're gonna bring us the bags, they're gonna bring us things, we're gonna clean this up. They end up cleaning it up, and all the city had to do was go pick up the bags. So the conversation is changing. It's not gonna happen overnight, but we are talking about these things, and all these concerns are welcome at the table to be able to be discussed and find solutions. So I thank you very much. Again, I don't know if you want to end, or I will officially just thank everyone again for being here. It is an ongoing conversation, and we hope that you can follow us. This report will be published in a four-part on the Valley Breeze, and it's going to be fully uploaded to their website. So any questions or anything, feel free always to reach out, and we'll continue. We're looking forward to fairly soon releasing the short-term and the long-term plan of action. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, everybody.